I am very pleased to bring you today's guest, William Gladstone, my good friend. They call him the hardest working man in publishing. He has published over, I think he has helped sign over 5,000 book deals. He's the owner of Waterside Publishing, and he has represented authors from Marianne Williamson to Deepak Chopra. He's represented Tom Hartman for over 25 years, and he has been a powerhouse in the consciousness movement and making the world a better place. How you doing, Bill?
Doing great. Delighted to be on this with you.
Yeah, likewise. And, he has also, over the years, supported a lot of organizing projects, including things we've done for PTSD veterans and big events to just raise awareness. So he's been a powerhouse, and we're really grateful for him to join us today to talk about publishing and writing books and spreading ideas. So, Bill, how long have you been in the publishing world?
Well, actually, my father started a publishing company in 1936, so I've been involved since I was born. I literally started working in publishing at the age of 6 for my dad's company. I was offered to be editor-in-chief of his competitor when I was 22. Worked for Harcourt Brace Jovanovich for a few years as editor-in-chief over there, and then set up Waterside in 1982. And since then, yeah, we've placed at least 5,000. The company's placed at least 10,000 books. I've been involved with at least 5,000 of them. And yeah, some great bestsellers. We did the For Dummies series, and we've had
ever heard of a little series called For Dummies?
So we placed the first 200 of those, and then we at the time represented Peter Norton and Linus Torvalds and the actual people, not the people Al Gore thinks created the internet, but the people who really did create the internet. Those books alone have sold over $3 billion retail. So, we've been very successful with technology. And then around the end of the century, the internet really took over, and most people no longer really need a how-to technical book. And we morphed without really intending to into becoming the major agency for mind, body, spirit books. I've always been interested in science, and one of my early clients at that time was Dr. Irvin Laszlo. He's been nominated a couple of times for the Nobel Peace Prize. He created the Club of Budapest, but his background is as a systems theorist. So he had a very systematic scientific approach to political change. And it's a small industry, so once you're successful in a specific space, everyone else comes to you. And so that's how, I'm not their primary agent, but I've agented books for Marianne Williamson, for Deepak Chopra. We're the primary agent for Neil Donald Walsh. Neil is the author of the Conversation with God book series. And then through that, we get, tons of referrals. I've actually never sought a client, but we have more than we can handle. And in recent years, as publishing has changed in the last 5 years, because we're one of the major literary agents, we were approached by Amazon with what they call their white gloves program. So Amazon will publish as an ebook and print on demand any book that we choose. And they will also promote those books, at least promote the ebook edition. So that's become more and more important part of what we do. Not so much from a monetary perspective, because we have big bestsellers like Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up and other books like that make a lot of money. But for activists particularly, unless you're very, very famous at a level of a Marianne or a Deepak or Tom Hartman, it's going to be very difficult to get you a deal with a major publisher. So if you can't get a deal with a major publisher, there's a few good, strong, independent publishers, but they're going to take 1.5 to 2 years to get your book out. That's the norm. And you're probably going to get a $5,000 or smaller advance against royalties, and the royalties will only be 10 to 15%. So
although I think for a lot of organizers, they're your $5,000 or $10,000, and a lot of the activists and organizers are working on a shoestring and really doing the best they can with very little resources. But what if someone say didn't like how Amazon does their practices? Is there any other routes outside of that? Or
there's a few. I mean, we have this problem, and I can't. I represent authors, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to get them the best return I can. Sure. And to ignore Amazon is suicide. Some of the independent publishers I admire. I know that Mark over at New World Library for a short time tried to boycott Amazon, it doesn't work. Amazon now represents over 60% of all revenue in book publishing in North America.
Wow.
So there are a couple of things. I mean, you can go with Ingram Spark, but if you're not going to play ball with Amazon, it's very unlikely you're going to have a significant impact in terms of book sales and reaching the largest possible audience. So there's different ways, to look at it. We all want to change the world for the better. And yes, it would be better if Amazon was not a monopoly, which it frankly is. And it would be better if Amazon had policies that were more aligned with, creating a better world. But that said, they can be used, like any technology can be used for good as well as for evil. And you can reach a lot of people through Amazon, and they are only focused on one thing, which is making money. So if you know that and you can work around that, you can work with Amazon. But I agree. I would prefer, the landscape of 30 years ago, where we had a lot of different players and we didn't have, at that time, the big bugaboo was Barnes and Noble. If you didn't make, good with Barnes and Noble, you suffered a lot. But even then you had Borders and you had some other chains, you had, options. Today, particularly with what's just happened, Barnes and Noble, we hope will survive. They've just been taken private, but it doesn't look like Amazon is going to get smaller or less dominant.
Yeah.
I would predict that within the next 10 years, Amazon will be as much as 70 to 80% of book revenue.
Well, and this is actually, I think, this is a manifestation of what we've seen in terms of the atomization of society. Noam Chomsky talks about this concept a lot. He talks about atomization. And atomization means something bigger broken down in smaller parts. It means we become increasingly more individualistic, more divided, more alone, less solidarity. You see the dissolution of the Elks Clubs and the unions and, organizations that would bring communities together. And you see now people, it's just me and my computer or my smartphone, and social media gives me the illusion of being connected, but without actually being connected.
No, you make some very good points. I will say in passing, we're about to publish a book from Noam Chomsky. So, he's always been one of our sort of intellectual heroes.
Uncle Noam, we love Uncle Noam.
So, we're, I haven't told him that we're going to be working with Amazon. I hope he doesn't object. But in any event, we do the best we can with the landscape that we're given. I do hope that Barnes & Noble survives, because I think what you're talking about is true. Bookstores are one of the few grassroots community organizations, or at least they can be. And many of the independents exist more for that purpose than for any making of money. Most bookstore owners are happy if they have a small profit and can at least pay themselves $20 an hour for their work. They're not doing it to make money. And there are many rewards, and we're part of that. We don't do all that we do to make money. So we have, within our own publishing program, many books, and my staff isn't happy about it because then the profit sharing is smaller, but we'll waive our, we do have a management fee. We're more of a hybrid model. We pay out 70% of the revenue, but the authors have to pay for the editing and the marketing and cover design. We get everything at, reduced prices for them. And in special cases, and we've done this we have a number of books by Holocaust survivors that we've published, and we've waived fees, and we'll waive fees in special situations, particularly if we resonate with the message of the book. So we try to help, but like any organization, we can't lose money. I'm okay not making money, but I try not to lose money. So, and we do, sometimes we know we're going to take something on and we're only going to sell a few hundred copies, but those few hundred copies can make a difference. So let's do it.
And I love what you said before. You said something to me before,
about the
it
manuscript.
wasn't about the book as much as supporting the person who's going to change the world.
Yeah, well, our motto, just as an agency, and this is on the for-profit side, is you can edit a manuscript, but you can't edit a human being. Yeah. So we put, first and foremost, the character and purpose of each individual we choose to either represent or publish. That's number one priority. And you can take someone who has excellent character and integrity and intent, and you can get them a good writer editor to make their manuscript sing. But you could have a very good manuscript from someone who's not a good human being, and we wouldn't want to be involved, even if you could make money doing that, because that's not what we're about.
I think that's I think if every industry, looked to that model, I think that we would have a drastically different world.
Well, and I think everyone would make a lot of money, because the reality is you make money when you're working with good people who have a good purpose. You don't necessarily make it in every transaction, but you have to take a longer view. Too many businesses, and this is part of what's wrong with our whole sort of mega capitalism right now. I'm a capitalist. I've benefited from it. I'm not going to say an end to capitalism. But when you have capitalism that focuses so much on the short term, it is not benefiting humanity. What is profitable over a 2 to 3 month period is not necessarily what is going to be most profitable strategy over a 5 to 10 year period. And we need to be looking at 5 to 10 year periods and longer. One of the reasons we have our environmental crisis is we had to force companies into looking at the long-term impact of their business practices. A wiser economy would have taken all this into account decades ago, and we would not be facing what is now almost beyond the point of no return in certain environmental situations. So, I do think we need to change our focus. I don't know how that's going to happen, particularly right now. Everyone is so money hungry. It's like, oh, I made another 5% on the stock market. Oh, let's reinvest in that. And there's a lot of diversity, and there's a lot of individuals and even companies that are looking at, the social impact of the companies they invest in, but it's happening too slowly and not universally, and it needs to be universal. And there are ways that it could be done. I mean, long ago, I was meeting with, I can't remember his name. He was the congressman who had no legs. He had returned from Vietnam without them. And he was one of the most brilliant people I had ever met. And we were talking, I happened to fly on a plane with him, and we were talking about, for the benefit corporations, where the tax rate for all corporations would be graded, get away with 100% not-for-profits. Every company has to show a public benefit. And the more public benefit they can show in numbers and dollars, the lower their tax rate would be. So policies like that could be created. It certainly wouldn't be any more bureaucratic than what we already have. Things could be done to make this world work better. Some of the ideas, are coming to the fore. And like anything else, you got to stir the pot. And I know a lot of people think some of the green agenda and some of these other things are too far out there. That's okay. It gets the conversations going. Right. And, we're not going to necessarily have revolution in the way of the economy, but if we can have some evolution, we're going to make some significant strides.
Well, certainly Tom, your client Tom and a lot of the others on the forefront really see that if we believe the climate scientists, that they're talking about numbers like 12 years. In reality, it's looking more like under 5 years, or we're looking at catastrophic and irreversible damage to our ecosystem of planet Earth. And that is going to mean World War II level mobilization to absolutely transform our economy. And I want to hear just your opinion on the power of books to really change people's thinking. Why?
There's no question books can make a huge difference. If you go all the way back to Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, that was a huge game changer. One book can make an enormous difference. Even if your book, as I said in the beginning, even if only a few hundred people read your book, you don't know who those 100 people are. And if one person who does have a much bigger platform than you gets an idea from your book and incorporates it into a book that is reaching millions of people, overnight, there can be change. We have a lot of inertia to overcome, but we've created the mess through ideas. We can get out of it through ideas. And, if you look at books, they can also be used for evil. I mean, there was, Mein Kampf. There's been a lot of other books.
Every book Ayn Rand.
Yeah. I mean, that promote, ideas that may not be for the benefit of humanity. So keep writing, keep sharing ideas. I mean, there's nothing wrong with blogging and posting, but there is something special about a book. When you have a book, even if it's an ebook, It forces you to really rewrite, because writing is easy. It's the rewriting and the editing where you really perfect something.
I got to tell you, like, even just writing the first draft for me, working on this current book based on the Political Revolutionaries Handbook, has been very, very, one of the hardest things I've ever done. But what advice would you give somebody when they're starting out? Like, say they have an idea, they have a vision, they have a story to tell, they have an idea. What advice would you give someone when they're just starting out?
Okay, well, the first thing I would do is identify my audience. Are you writing this book just for you and your 12 friends, or are you writing this book for a larger audience? Are you writing this book just for other progressives who already think like you, or are you trying to reach a middle audience? Because you're never going to, the far right, you're never going to reach, so I wouldn't worry about them too much. But where you get change is for those with little dust. This is a title from a book that a guru in India wrote about those who were, not completely asleep, just with a little dust. That's probably the audience you want to go for. So first thing, identify your audience. And then second thing, create an outline. I'm a big believer in outlines. You can change your outline. It's like specs for a house. You can come up with a new room later. But if you have an outline, it's going to give you the structure. Once you have the structure, then you just need the discipline. And what you should do is set aside an hour or 2 hours at the same time, if possible, every day, maybe 6 days a week instead of 7. But, it's like any exercise you do. And unlike physical exercise where you need to rest those muscles, everybody's different. When I'm writing, I go every single day. I don't even take a break. And if you just, and you'd be surprised, an hour or 2. And some days, you're just not feeling it. And you come up with something that you end up having to throw away. But sometimes when you're not feeling it, you end up writing some of your best material. It's not about having inspiration every day. It's about staying with it and getting from point A to point B to point C to point D and having a coherent book. And if you do that, you can really get a book written in 60, 90 days. I write my books that quickly. Now I'm faster than most. But even if you're a more deliberate writer, you certainly can get a book written in 6 to 9 months. And that is not a lot of time to write a whole book. And I'm talking about a full page, 40,000 to 60,000 word book. That is one of the other good things right now. 40 to 60,000 words is better than, 80 to 90,000. Books are getting shorter. So, if you look at it that way, I mean, how many words do you think you can write in a 2-hour writing session? At least a couple of thousand. So, wow, in 10 days, that's 20,000 words. In a month, I've got a first draft of 60,000 words. It's not really that hard.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I found one of the best things I did was sign up for the masterclass.com series, where there are so many different authors to give advice. And one of the things I think that Malcolm Gladwell said was, write a bad first draft. And that was really helped me, because I just let myself write a bad first draft. And I didn't put the pressure on myself to have it be War and Peace or some, didn't have to be Noam Chomsky. I let it be bad. And that really,
I would rather you use the word imperfect, because you don't intentionally write bad. And you never know. Some people, luck of the draw, there have been people who their very first draft or their very first book has come out great. It can happen. But you don't want the pressure of feeling, oh, this is my final manuscript. I go even further, and I tell my authors, this is your first book. This isn't your best book. It's your first book. But I agree with you totally. You need to let go and not worry, that your first draft is going to be publishable. It probably won't be, and that's okay.
All right. So in terms of the process, I actually had Mark Engler, who is one of the co-authors of This Is an Uprising. I actually have been reaching out to other authors to get support. I'm a big believer in mentorship. There's a great benefit in, getting mentored by people who have been doing what you want to do for a long time. And I realized that, 3 years into it, what I thought was the right process was actually not correct. Because he said, everything that I thought, okay, write a book and then we'll take it to, whoever to help us, put it out there. And he's like, no, you want to start with putting the idea out and putting out proposals. So if someone's getting started in the process, what advice would you have for them in terms of getting their book out there? You know, do they write?
First thing I would have someone do is contact the most famous, successful people they know and get their comments about the idea of their book, and ask them if they would be willing to provide an endorsement or blurb for the book when the book's published, just based on their personal relationship. Because a lot of people will, it's what I was saying before. If you're a person that someone else of, you know, prominence respects, they'll give you that blurb based on that relationship, knowing that the book may not be perfect, but that the book can be edited. So don't wait until you have a finished book to start getting endorsements. I mean, every individual is different. To get the final endorsement, they say, okay, yeah, you can use my name if you're trying to get an agent, and you can say, you know, I'm going to endorse your book, but I'm going to have to read the book before I actually endorse it. And that's okay. Everyone knows that things can change. But I often, when I'm sending out a book proposal, ask an author to give me a list of 20 to 30 people within their network, when they do know a lot of well-known successful authors, and we'll say, you know, at least half of the following people know this author and are interested in this topic and are likely to provide endorsements and even to some social media upon publication. So that's really one of the very most important first steps. Find people who are going to support the book, and then also investigate what are your own resources for promoting and marketing the book. Are you part of a 100,000 member organization where you can promote the book yourself? Because if you're a first-time author, the publishers aren't going to be the key to you. The publishers are better. I mean, if you think about a car, a publisher can't get a car from 0 to 20 miles an hour. They can take a car that's going 20 miles an hour and get it up to 60. You need to get your car going to 20, and that's hard.
And so what are some of the ways that you've seen people be successful at doing that?
Mainly, well, it's always changing. I've seen some do it with social media. If you really understand how social media works, though it's changing all the time. I have seen people go, I mean, I have one client in particular, he happens to be the social media consultant for Rihanna and Taylor Swift. And as an experiment, he wanted to see if he could use those same techniques for himself. And spending less than $10,000, he was able to generate 1 million Facebook followers in less than 30 days. So obviously it can be done. You know, for some people, $10,000 is, you know, much too much money, but right. If he could do that for 10,000, maybe you can get 100,000 for 1,000. I don't know, but you do need to build up and have a credible social media base. That's one of the things you need to do. You need to help other authors. The more you help other authors, the more they're likely to help you. So if you have expertise and an author asks you to be on their blog, because most authors today have blogs, you should say yes. And you should get yourself out there in every way possible. If you're more prominent, if you can get yourself on major media, TV, radio, interviewed in magazines, do it. Don't wait until the book's done. Start right away, because the publishers are all looking for what they call platform. They want visibility of an author. It's not enough to have a great idea. Obviously, if you just look around, you know, some of the younger Congress women that have just been elected, they're all ripe right now to do books if they choose, and some of them are. But could they have done the book before they got elected? In most cases, probably not, at least not with a major publisher. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg. It's like going to a bank. They'll loan you money when you don't need the money.
Right.
A publisher will offer you a publishing contract when you don't really need them.
Right. And so let's just say that so you have self-publishing versus going through a traditional publisher. What are sort of the pros and cons of each?
Well, we're not a big fan of the self-publishing. That's why what we have, we call it hybrid, because every book that we release is edited properly, proofread properly, designed properly, and we're selective. We do, 50 to 100 titles a year. Self-publishing, unfortunately, you can do anything you want, and there's 200,000 plus self-published books. And so it's very uneven. There's some terrible books that are being released. There's some good ones also. But a lot of the self-publishing is about making money for the entity behind it. And, they're not necessarily giving the best advice. And, even some of the more reputable ones are fudging a bit when they promote themselves. They say, we're going to do this marketing, that marketing, and, they'll get you in for a couple of $1,000s. And then next thing you know, they're asking for $5, $10, $20,000 in marketing. And frankly, none of that marketing really works. So you have to be cautious. Obviously we can't take everybody ourselves. And there's some other, but I would explore hybrid publishing before self-publishing. It's, but be sure that you're getting a fair deal and that you're not being overcharged for anything. But it's hard because it's getting increasingly difficult to find a traditional publisher.
So Bill, so let's just say someone does go with a traditional publisher. Let's just say that they're able to do that. How does one navigate that world? Like what, especially if they're an organizer, an activist, a progressive, environmental organizer, because I know that I remember
if they have a big following, they should be able to get a literary agent. You're still going to need an agent. Even the small publishers, for the most part, there's a few exceptions, want an agent involved, a literary agent. The reason they want a literary agent involved is, one, they're counting on you to have vetted it to be sure that the person is stable and competent. More importantly, they don't want to have to take a lot of time to explain how publishing works, because publishing contracts are very one-sided in favor of the publisher. So they want an agent who understands the basic way business is usually done to be the interface between them and the author. It's also better because the author should be talking only about the book as a book and not about the book as a piece of commerce, because publishing does exist as a commercial enterprise to make money. So the agent can sort of just take that burden. And if you have a good agent, of course, the agent will, they normally take 15% commission, and they generally can get you at least 15% better terms. And that may not be in terms of the advance and the royalties, but better control of the foreign rights. There's a lot of different issues that come up.
And is there anything also in the writing process, I'm actually asking for myself authentically, that, would be useful to know in the writing process that is going to be, because I've read things about, song lyrics or things that are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's the mechanics. I mean, you need to understand, song lyrics and poems, you can't even use a line without permission. So, right. And this is actually a big problem because everybody loves to quote music because music is great, but unless, you know the musician, you're going to have to pay for that. And even if you know the musician, sometimes you have to pay for it because they've already licensed the right to their publisher, and it can be very expensive. Not so much with prose. You can take up to 35 words from any book, and as long as you give credit, you don't even need permission. If you take more than 35 words, you need permission.
What about
publishers?
Quotes? Like, say I see a video Noam Chomsky did that's on YouTube. Can I transcribe some of those words, or do I need his permission?
It's a gray area because you don't know if the person who posted it on YouTube actually had the right to post it on YouTube. So I'm always one to tell my authors, no, you stick with, the same as if it had been copyrighted in a book. You can use 35 words without permission. Anything more than that, you're best to get permission. But, you can always take chances. And, if it's self-published, you can always just take the book down, or, I doubt there'll be a big financial judgment against you, but a major publisher is going to have their own set of rules. And in most cases, they're probably similar to what I would advise.
So, and is that the same for blogs and for, taking content from stuff that's online? That's intellectual property, and that you need permission. And what's the process to get permission? Is it just a simple contract, or?
Well, it's a letter. You have to send. There's form letters. You can get them off the internet that you send, and anything from $1. You usually want to pay at least $1 because that shows there was a transaction of some kind. And then what you want to usually request is worldwide rights in English and all foreign languages, and so you have that secure. That's the safest way to do it. It's also the most time consuming. It's one of the reasons why traditional publishers who want to take this extra precaution, in most cases are publishing books 12 to 18 to 24 months after delivery of the first draft of the manuscript. That's the biggest negative for your audience, people that are involved with political issues usually want their books out quickly.
Right.
You know, 6 months, it seems like a long time. We have one book coming out that we tried to place with a major publisher, but they couldn't get it out in time. So, and it's a book that's calling for impeachment. And so obviously, hey, that book is going to be old news, you know, well, maybe not, what happens with the election,
Right.
but, you know, but definitely, you know, unless the book can be published in the next 3 to 4 months, it's not going to have a long shelf life. That's not predictably. So that we decided in the end that we would publish it because we can move more quickly. So that book will probably come out in October or November.
Amazing. And are there any publishers that are, I think Mark Engler mentioned like OR books, they're used to doing things a little more quickly. You know, are there, you know, the difference between academic press and, you know, larger corporate press or medium-sized press?
Yeah, I mean, there's fast relative to the industry, but it's still slow. I
Right.
mean, unless you're going with, you know, an ebook publisher, I mean, we're probably about as fast as anybody. You know, it's not a fast process.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And it just in terms of mindset, you know, what kind of mindset would you recommend people have going through this whole process?
Look at a book as a marketing tool for your larger endeavor, whatever that might be. If it's getting elected, if it's trying to change a policy. And for people who, you know, use books to build their business, I tell them, look at your book as a marketing tool that may become a profit center. But most authors and most books lose money. Even books published by the major publishers, for the most part, lose money. It used to be the 20-80 rule where 20% of the books made all the money. Now it's probably closer to 90-10, where only 10% of the books are making the money to sustain book publishers. The big books, because of, you know, everything that's going on, for the most part, sell more when they're successful because there's fewer slots available, so fewer books are getting those slots. So when you have a hit today, yeah, we've had books sell 3 million copies, 5 million copies, 10 million copies. So the rich get richer and everybody else has to struggle.
Yeah, I guess, and I think that's what this whole conversation is all about. How do we co-create a society that works for everybody? You know, not just the 1%, not just the 0.01%. So I think that rings so true. And just are there any rookie mistakes you see people making?
Well, getting too excited and thinking their book because someone in their inner circle has told them how important it is, thinking it's going to sell tens of thousands of copies overnight. Very rarely will that happen. It's also, you need to have a certain amount of detachment. We all love our children and our grandchildren. And, you know, it's okay within the family to say they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Authors feel the same way about their book. You may, and your friends may feel that your book is, you know, such a wonderful book. And it may in fact be a wonderful book, but that doesn't mean that the world is going to beat a path to your door to buy your book. You just need to be very realistic about how many books are being published and how few of them really sell more than a couple of thousand copies.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that's true with any organizing effort. You know, having what I call a marathon mindset. Like we got to have a marathon mindset, not a sprint mindset. And that means that if I fall down, stumble, you know, I'm not out. It takes time and patience and quite frankly, like a lot of training to be successful. And for me, in any organizing endeavor, it takes a lot of time to build competency and mindset and stamina, you know, and resilience because it's hard. All of these things are really, really hard.
Well, the other thing to remember is I have another author who's written a beautiful book called The Mosaic, and it's how everything fits together to form a whole. And it may be that your role is not that your book is going to be successful at the level that you envision, but that your book is going to be a catalyst for someone else to do something that you feel equally passionate about supporting. So if you take sort of a little less attachment to your own personal ego and your own personal effort, you're likely to have greater success because there is an element, we can call it serendipity, timing, whatever you wish, but there is no real control. I mean, I've had authors whose books I thought would sell hundreds of thousands of copies that have fallen flat. And I've had authors with books that I thought, oh, if we sell 10,000 copies, that'll be great. And I've been wrong on both sides. There's things that happen that are beyond our control, and the universe is benign, in my opinion. The universe does support us, even when we fail, because it's telling us, no, not now, not there, redirect your energy. So I personally think people should write books if they enjoy the process of writing books. If they have something important to say and they want to really hone their thinking, the writing will hone their thinking as much as anything they can do, more than just talking with someone else. So I think there's something useful in writing the book for the sake of writing it. Then the next parts of it, whether it actually is going to be published by a quote traditional publisher, a hybrid publisher, or in the end you're going to self-publish, may be less important than you think.
Beautiful. And lastly, you mentioned that in terms of going to a more traditional publishing route or a hybrid publishing route, you said that having an agent is really important to the process. How would somebody go about
getting an agent?
Yeah.
Well, it's really difficult. Now, you're a friend, so if you send someone to me, I'm likely to look at it. I'm not necessarily friends with everyone who's listening to this, so they should really just go to, I think it's www.watersideadmin or something. I don't even know, because we don't really solicit clients. But, if people send things, they get looked at. We have, readers and things. In terms of outside of Waterside, getting an agent, there's books on how to do it. It's not easy. That's getting harder and harder. But, it's like anything. If you really are committed to doing it, we actually recommend Jeff Herman's book on getting a literary agent. It's a guide to publishers and literary agencies. But there's other sources as well. You need to write a really good one-page query letter, and you can send it, to 100 or so agents, and maybe 1 or 2 will respond. We actually, as a policy, won't. We only take referrals. We're not interested in random submissions. So if somebody does send us a query letter because they've heard me speak or something like that, we'll try to get back to them in less than 2 weeks, but only if we're being told we're the only one that they're querying.
Got it. Fantastic. And let's just say you do get your foot in the door, and you do create the opportunity for yourself. What are some of the things that might you look at favorably versus might turn you off?
Well, number one, what's the track record of the agency? I mean, if it's someone who's just put their shingle out and has never sold a book, be cautious. They may be great over time, but they're not going to have all the contacts and relationships of an established agency. The other thing to look at is what kinds of books are they selling? Do those books resonate with you? Do you want to be represented by the same agency that's representing those books? So that's one way to do it.
Nice. And one of the things Mark Engler mentioned that I thought was a really good advice too is to go on your bookshelf and look at the books you have on your bookshelf. Who's putting those books out? Go into the thank yous. Most likely the agent's going to be thanked in
that's a great idea. You should look, and also for the editors. So you come back with, when you contact the agent who's been thanked, that agent you already know is connected to an editor who's also interested in your area. So that's a very, very good suggestion.
Awesome. And lastly, how do you keep yourself going? How do you nourish yourself, take care of yourself?
Well, I'm big into sports. I play golf and tennis 3 or 4 times a week. I live by the beach. I walk on the beach 2 or 3 times a week. So every day I'm doing at least one physical activity for at least a couple of hours. And I schedule that activity first, and business has to work around that.
So making sure your physical body. And if you had one, I would just invite you to, as we're closing, you get to talk right into the camera, heart to heart with anybody who's watching. If people who are watching this are, they have some feeling that they want to make a difference in the world. What is your message to them, heart to heart?
Heart to heart, be kind to others. Everything starts with your daily interaction with everyone in your environment. So kindness will go a long way. Keep things simple. Don't be hard on yourself if you're not achieving as big an impact as you think you should be. I think that we need to start with kindness towards ourselves, towards our family, and towards those with whom we interact. Even, those in the supermarket when you go and check out. Just give everyone a smile and know that you're here for a purpose and that life is good. Even when things seem to be going badly, there's always going to be some atrocities, some things going wrong. That's why we're activists. But overall, just to be a human being at this time, it's a miracle. And appreciate the miracle and enjoy life.
Oh, and I remember that being a message from the book you co-wrote with Chicken Soup for the Soul author Jack Canfield, The Golden Motorcycle Gang. I think that was one of the themes I remember in that book you guys co-wrote together.
Yeah, it really is. Life can be simple and life is beautiful. I mean, not every aspect of it, if you watch too much news, you're going to think we're living in hell, but we're not. There's a lot of good going on in the world. There's a lot of good people in the world, and most of the problems can be solved. You just have to keep the faith, so to speak. Be an optimist. Don't focus on the things that are not working. Focus on the things that are.
Thank you, everybody. Today's guest, William Gladstone, Waterside Publishing. Thank you so much for creating time out of your busy day to talk to our audience and share your wisdom and experience.
You're very welcome. I hope everybody has a great day.
Great. Thanks, Bill.